there's still going to be troubles. But do you want troubles that are self-imposed or imposed by other masters? Or do you want burdens that Christ says, come, let's work on them together? So it's unrealistic to expect a trouble-free life as Christian. It's unrealistic to expect no problems at all. And it's actually, we treat Christ as an ATM when we think all we can do is to come to him and then that's it, magic wand, things are actually gone. No, it's actually ignorance, and it's a lot of false promises that then end up with a lot of people disappointed in Christianity because the expectation of just, you know, I don't know, angels and clouds and harps and floating doesn't come through. No, we are going to have challenges. We are going to have difficulties, and we need to deal with our difficulties, but we deal with them better when we bring them to Christ. And whilst he's dealing with them, in whatever way he's dealing with them, we're busy with his yoke, on his yoke, which is much lighter, which is actually attached to him. So you can't then carry Christ's yoke without Christ. You have to have a relationship with who Christ is. You have to allow him to be your master. Then you can experience this rest that he actually wants to give you. You have to then allow him to guide you and navigate you. When the cows were plowing, they were not just walking willy-nilly wherever they feel like it. The master would direct them in terms of whoever the master is. We have to direct them in terms of, you know, where is a straight line? In which way are we going? So you have to allow Christ to also then help you to navigate, you know, with this yoke that you've got on, to navigate whilst yoked with him on the yoke that he actually has applied. So if we've ever felt so burdened, right, to a point where, like John, you're saying, are you really the Christ? Or to a point where your own hard-heartedness is really creating more and more burdens for you. Christ says, actually, it can get easier. It doesn't go away, but it actually can get easier. Then he says, which is almost like a change in tone in the verse. Then he says, and I want to read now verse 29. He says, take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart. I mean, I'm gentle and humble in heart feels so out of place when you look at this verse that's talking about, you know, labor and burden and heaviness. And then he says, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your soul. So we've taken upon his yoke. We learned from him, because you can't operate this yoke without learning from him how it works. So we are sitting at his feet, we're learning from him. And then he reminds us that he's gentle and lowly in heart. And I'm taking it that one of the things that we need to learn as we're carrying on this yoke then is the humility that he has, that he's displaying, right? That he's gentle and lowly. And it's easy to look at that and look at it as a weakness, because in the world that we find ourselves in, people associate humility with weakness, right? So it's easy to not want to be on the quote unquote weak side. And yet actually it takes inner strength to be able to operate Christ's yoke and do the things and be on his mission and be humble as well. So for example, in one of the verses, he admonishes us to turn the other cheek, right? That takes a lot of inner strength. I mean, when someone is poking you and they want a reaction from you, it takes actually more strength to not respond than to respond. It would be easy to just slap them back or whatever. That's easy. That's not necessarily strength. Strength is about self-control. It's about holding back. It's about being able to review the situation and say, what is best for this situation? So when Christ calls us to then be lowly at heart, to be humble in heart, he's not asking us to be weak. He's actually asking us to be strong, but strong not in the way that the world and the devil defines it, but strong in a way that's more effective, strong in a way that's also going to help us in this mission, strong in a way that's not defined by others, right? But strong in a way that's defined by this Christ that you yoked with. So the only way to then work on his mission is by having a heart that's gentle, that's humble, that is open to more learning and teaching from him. Ellen White says in Steps to Christ that a knowledge of truth depends not so much upon the strength of intellect as upon the pureness of purpose, the simplicity of earnestness, and dependent faith. So your being tied to Christ is going to teach you that. It's going to teach you not to have a head knowledge of who he is, how he operates, what this yoke is, and what this yoke that's easy on his mission is. But it's also about changing who you are as a person. It's about the change of heart. It's about the change of how others experience you. So it requires that. And that's why he says, learn from me, because you have to unlearn all of those other things that you have learned that have put you on the defensive and that have landed you here with this heaviness. You have to unlearn those and learn from him. And the first thing he says is to learn is learn humility. Learn humility, yet learn to humble yourself, learn to be meek. I mean, in Matthew 5, he says, blessed are the meek, sorry. Blessed are the meek, for they shall inherit heaven, the kingdom. And again, it feels so contradictory to what we're used to, but it's actually a strength, and there's benefit in that. It doesn't mean being a pushover, because Christ was not a pushover. I don't think anyone can describe him as that. He spoke the truth. He stood up for what is right, and he reprimanded where he needed to reprimand. He corrected where he needed to correct. I mean, he even gave out a few lashings where he needed to give out a few extra lashings. So he wasn't weak, right? And he wasn't a pushover or a walkover. He could stand his ground. He just didn't need to grandstand while doing it. And it wasn't about him and his ego. It was always about the mission and the purpose. So even when he was confronted by people, some things he walked away from, he didn't respond. Some things he responded to. He was able to determine when to respond and how to respond. And that's what he's saying, learn from us. I mean, from him. Learn from him how to deal with the situations that you're going to be confronted with, the situations that may poke you and push you into a corner. Learn from him how to be able to do that with the humility that's required, with the meekness that's required, whilst dealing with the issues directly. Because one of the things that happens is when we're feeling weary and burdened and all of that, it's easy to want to turn to self and to want to turn to ego and my own strength and my own, how can I get myself out of this and fix this? Or, this makes me look weak, or this is reflecting badly on me, or what are people going to think about me if I can handle this and all of that. And Christ is saying, be humble, be gentle, be humble. Two qualities that are not necessarily always associated with winning, right? With succeeding. But this is how we find true rest. We find true rest in allowing Christ to be that strength for us, in allowing ourselves to be yoked with him on his yoke that's custom made for my little weak shoulders here that can only carry. And that's why Paul says then that we will never be given